postpartum is a preview of coming attractions in perimenopause.
So help me understand that. Like, is that for your bio individuality, like how you handle that massive drop in hormones sort of previews how you're going to handle it in menopause?
Yeah, I mean, it tells you hormones are pretty complicated. And, it's not just the levels. I'm kind of simplifying in some ways when I talk about, the sky high level when
Yeah.
you're pregnant and before you give birth and deliver your placenta to having almost nothing. There's other issues too. So it's not just production of hormones, it's also receptor physiology. It's also detoxification. Like, what have you been eating? Have you been eating lots of broccoli and lots of different species of vegetables, or have you been eating Pop-Tarts? All of these things are involved. But yes, it's this, what women tend to respond to, those of us that are sensitive to it, is the delta. So it's the change in hormones, the change in hormones postpartum, the change in hormones, usually in a good direction during pregnancy, the change in hormones that happens in perimenopause, and then the change of hormones that happens in menopause. Same thing with puberty. So puberty, is like perimenopause in reverse. So it's those transitions that seem to trigger mood issues.
Yes.
For those of us that are sensitive to it.
Yeah. It's so powerful to hear you talk about the science, not being trained in it, because I had really intense postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. I've never had a mood disorder. I have my feelings and I feel things deeply, but I've never struggled with my mental health in that true kind of struggle way. And it was humbling and terrifying. I thought I remember saying to my mom, my friends, to Keith, I was just like, I don't know how anybody ever recovers from this.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so life altering, identity altering, and that profundity of exhaustion, like you mentioned earlier, and just like incapable. Like, I have to do the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, which is keep another human being alive. And I'm not here to do it.
Yeah.
It was the worst feeling.
It is the worst feeling. And I think in many ways we set women up to fall because we do not tell them about what's happening and we do not support them.
Yeah.
And I want to hear about your experience. My experience when I was postpartum with that first baby, I did not have this experience with my second baby. So the hopeful part here is that you can completely change the architecture of your next birth.
That gives me hope.
Yeah. But with that first baby, I just sat there bawling. It was so stark and so dark and terrifying, so lonely.
Yeah.
So isolating.
Totally.
And I was surrounded by people I love.
I know, me too. I mean, we have incredible community. People are bringing food. I have this incredibly supportive husband, family. Like, I could not imagine having more on some level, and still I got that far gone. I'm like, how do we do this better, Sarah? How do we not set women up like this? Because it does feel like a setup. I was educated. I used to be a birth doula myself. I'd been around countless friends who had had babies and gone through it. And I still got pummeled.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to pretend like I have, here's the 7 steps to prevent this from happening to you. I mean, there's some of that. There's some things that can really make a difference. I think a lot of it is the heavy lift of really understanding what's happening physiologically, functionally, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. Those pieces, like I look back now, I thought I knew what was going